Hi, this is Daniel DiTuro. Are you concerned about rising inflation rates? In this video, I'll share what is inflation, the U.S. Consumer Price Index, supply and demand, cost of goods sold, an unregulated free market, Federal Reserve interest rates, credit and inflation, and how your personal inflation rate may vary. Inflation is the term economists use for increases in the price of goods and services over time. As prices increase, the buying power of money decreases. For example, goods and services costing $100 in March 1960 cost almost $1,000 in March 2022. Inflation affects the poor and people on fixed incomes more than the wealthy. The U.S. inflation rate is calculated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics in Washington, D.C. Inflation and deflation are based on the consumer price indexes. The CPI includes price changes for goods and services, consumption by urban households, includes user fees like water and sewer, includes sales and excise taxes, and excludes income taxes. Data is collected in 75 urban areas, includes 25,000 retail and service establishments, and rent data from about 50,000 landlords and tenants. The CPI affects cost of living adjustments for almost 80 million Americans, including almost 50 million on Social Security. CPI measures the cost of food and beverages, housing, clothes, transportation, medical care, recreation, education and communication, and other goods and services. Many factors affect the annual rate of inflation. A major factor of inflation is supply and demand. When demand exceeds supply, prices tend to increase. For example, demand for a new car model exceeds the supply. Dealers add a surcharge to the suggested retail price. When supply exceeds demand, retailers reduce the price. Food is another example. In-season produce generally costs less than out-of-season produce. The cost of some goods and services increase faster than the rate of inflation, while others increase slower. The cost of healthcare has increased faster than the rate of inflation for decades. Education costs have also risen faster than the rate of inflation for decades, as states transfer the cost of higher public education from taxpayers to students. Another factor of inflation is the cost of goods sold. This includes all expenses required to produce, store, and ship products. When these costs increase, the supplier can reduce the cost of goods sold, reduce their profit margin, or increase product costs. For decades, manufacturers have outsourced production to reduce labor and other expenses. Outsourcing jobs has nothing to do with the political party in office. It's all about corporate profits, return on investment, and CEO compensation. Millions of Americans place product cost above product quality. Why pay $100 for a set of knives that will last a lifetime when one can buy a similar set for $19.99 that rusts after one use? After all, most products have a one-year warranty. Most lifetime warranties are not worth the effort or expense. A consumer price index flaw is that it only looks at product cost, not product quality. For decades, manufacturers have reduced product quality and product quantity while charging the same price or more. Americans pay more for hundreds of products that continue to shrink in size year after year. This 15¼ ounce bag of potato chips labeled party size was a 16-ounce family size bag in the 1960s. For decades, Americans have elected conservative politicians advocating an unregulated free market economy. High inflation has become a political tool. The same free market conservatives are blaming a liberal president and Congress for today's high inflation. Federal and state governments do not control prices for products and services. The government does not regulate what suppliers charge for products and services. Some government policies do affect the price of some products. For example, requiring pollution control equipment for factories and cars. What most Americans do not realize is that some data BLM uses to calculate the CPI is up to 3 years old. It's amazing how gasoline prices can increase by 50 cents overnight, but take months to reflect lower oil prices. One reason is the fact oil companies know Americans will complain, but still fill up their gas tank. Many corporations have adopted just-in-time inventory management to reduce inventories and cut expenses. With just-in-time, local warehouses were replaced by regional distribution centers. Instead of products being hours away, they can be days away. Any sudden increase in demand or disruption to the supply chain causes product shortages. Just-in-time also does not cover panic buying and hoarding. Many products now depend on long-haul truck drivers to replenish inventory. The U.S. has a shortage of 80,000 long-haul truck drivers. The truck driver shortage did not occur overnight. Contrary to popular belief, the Federal Reserve reports to the U.S. Congress, not the President. One way of controlling inflation is the Federal Reserve's interest rates charged to banks. Banks use the Federal Reserve's interest rate to set their prime lending rate. The Federal Reserve decreases interest rates to stimulate the economy and increases them to slow economic growth. The Federal Reserve's interest rate has been near zero for over a decade. Good news for borrowers, bad news for people on fixed incomes. Corporations making record profits use low interest rates to buy other companies. Over the past 15 years, retirees have seen their savings accounts dwindle. For a retiree, 5% interest on $500,000 produces $25,000 in annual interest. At 0.5% interest, the same $500,000 produces $2,500 a year, a little over $200 a month. With record low inflation, millions of retirees are struggling to make ends meet. Thanks to the U.S. Supreme Court, Americans pay up to 30% annual credit card interest. Every $1,000 of credit card debt carried a full year adds up to $300 to that debt. Americans owe over $850 billion in credit card debt. Eliminate credit cards and other consumer debt, and inflation would disappear, since most Americans cannot afford to pay cash. Without consumer credit, the U.S. economy would go into recession. Millions of Americans use credit to live well beyond their means. With rising prices, Americans are relying more heavily on consumer credit. Businesses are using new ways for consumers to pay for goods and services over time. As I've shared, CPI is based on the cost of goods and services in 75 urban areas, including suburbs. If you live in a rural area, your CPI may be lower or higher. Even if you live in an urban area, your CPI and inflation may be different. CPI market basket and pricing procedures are for a theoretical average household. Your cost of living and inflation rate may be less than or more than the CPI. For example, food costs are based on diaries by 7,000 families over a 2-week period. Many American families eat diets high in prepared foods. Their food costs are higher than families eating mostly home-cooked meals. In April 2019, I published the video Healthy Eating on $5 a Day. Between 2020 and 2021, my individual food costs increased 9%, from about $2,150 to $2,350. My average daily cost increased from about $6 to $6.50 a day. While both are significantly higher than $5 a day, they are far less than the cost of prepared foods and dining out. How many prepared meals or restaurant meals can you buy for $2.15 a meal? Just one low-nutrition fast food meal costs more than $2.15. The CPI inflation rate for food and beverages includes prepared meals and full-service meals. If you seldom eat prepared meals, your food costs are going to be lower than the typical American family. Housing costs are a big part of the Consumer Price Index. Most people do not buy new bedroom furniture every year, and for homeowners, increased housing prices means increased equity. While some people may buy new clothes and jewelry on a regular basis, for most people, these categories do not apply until you're ready to buy new clothes or jewelry. Transportation is a similar category. Most people do not buy a new vehicle every few months or years, and some people seldom travel by air. People owning cars and trucks need fuel and insurance. Motor vehicle insurance is based on losses in a geographical location. People living in states with high traffic fatality and accident rates pay higher insurance premiums. After years of declining fatalities, accidents and fatalities are increasing. Higher auto prices also contribute to higher insurance premiums. I've shared that healthcare costs have risen faster than the rate of inflation. The American diet and lifestyle contribute to higher medical costs. The recreation category is all consumer discretionary spending. Recreation is a category where many consumers go deeply into debt by living beyond their means. Education and communication is another category where consumers can either live within their means or live beyond their means. For other goods and services, non-smokers will have a lower rate of inflation than smokers. While funeral expenses continue to increase, it's a one-time expense that doesn't affect your annual budget. As you have seen, many factors affect your annual cost of living. You can control some expenses and not others. While political parties place the blame for high inflation on the party in office, high inflation is caused by demand exceeding supply and an unregulated free market economy. Please leave a comment if you have any questions about this video. Thank you for watching.